Okay, let's just head straight to Group F, in the African Cup of Nations, right? So, look, so far, the African Cup of Nations tournament in Ivory Coast has seen a number of surprises in the opening day. There's been a number of surprises, plenty. You understand? Plenty. Egypt almost lost to Mozambique, a team that hadn't qualified, that hadn't played in the African Cup of Nations for 14 years. Ghana lost to Cape Verde. Nigeria drew with Equatorial Guinea. Cameroon were held to another 1-1 draw to Guinea. So it tells you that there's no team that can be underestimated in this tournament. As well as big guns Tunisia were handed a shocking defeat by Namibia. So that was a historic victory for Namibia. That was their first victory in their history of the African Cup of Nations. This is the same Namibia team that collected 4 points of four-time champions Cameroon. I mean, not four-time champions, five-time champions Cameroon, en route to actually making it to the finals of the African Cup of Nations this year in Ivory Coast. So, was Tanzania gonna make a big scalp out of Morocco, the semi-finalists of the World Cup? Definitely not. You understand? Definitely not. Because Morocco were victorious by 3-0 in the opening encounter of Group F, right, which saw them taking on Tanzania. We knew that they were going to be too strong for the East Africans, as they, comfortably secured a 3-0 victory over Tanzania. So in a tournament where minnows, have shone so far, obviously the Atlas Lions, Morocco, they've brushed off any ideas of another upset with a commanding performance against, a struggling Tanzanian side, running out 3-0 winners in the opening game, right? It was perhaps a hot and timid evening, in San Pedro, but then the game started in a relatively, in a relatively timid fashion, which would have actually pleased Tanzanian coach Adel Amaruche, But however, after the short, water break, the first water break of the encounter in the first half, we saw a refreshed, Morocco, team. That way we saw by their star players, began to shine. They began to show their quality. They began to show what they are capable of. As we saw a fierce free kick from Hakim Ziyech, fell into the path of Romain Saiss, the former Wolverhampton Wanderers defender who smashed home the rebound after a fierce strike from Hakim Ziyech from a 30-yard free kick, which actually gave the Moroccans a first half deserved lead. And it was actually it was beckoning. We knew that the goal would eventually come. It was just a matter of breaking the resilience of Tanzania. And I guess that water break did do them so much, refreshment. It brought so much out of these stars. And, players like Ziyech, Hakimi, players like Unahi began to prove their quality, began to show what they're capable of, and that they are meant for the big stage. Ironically, Ziyech, whenever he dons the colors of the Atlas Lions, you see a whole different Ziyech. You see the Ziyech that we all know, the Ziyech that we all fell in love with, compared to the Ziyech that we've been seeing at club level at Chelsea as well as at Galatasaray. He's having a pretty, decent season at Galatasaray, on loan from Chelsea. But yeah, it's not yet the best of Ziyech, the best that, we know that Ziyech can produce. I mean, the Ajax Ziyech, we want that one. The Morocco Ziyech, that's the Ziyech we want to see at club level for Galatasaray, And that's important, you always have to, when you play for your national team, you must always play with pride, play to win, play to actually, show your quality, play to actually have pride, play, to actually put your heart and soul into it. Because now when you're representing your national team, it's a different feeling. for a footballer, and that's exactly what we see with Ziyech. At national team level, he's phenomenal. He's just impeccable. He's so, he's what can I say? He's so exhilarating at national team level, and he's great to watch, right? And from that point onwards, the Atlas Lions, they only grew into confidence as they began playing like a side, who reached the World Cup semi-finals just over a year ago. After, unfortunately, Tanzania, they found themselves down to 10 men, following another reckless challenge from Novartis Miroshi, and from that particular point onwards, the game was just a no contest. No contest, meant to say. It was just a no contest. We knew that from that point onwards, there was no way that Tanzania were going to pull themselves back into the game. We knew that Morocco were going to make use and capitalize of the one goal advantage and actually be more ruthless in front of attack. But it was not meant to be. They were ruthless. 3 goals is enough, but they could have scored more. But the game was put beyond any reasonable doubt, beyond the reach of the East Africans, as a great shot from, Azzedine Ounahi, the Marseille midfielder, who has been brilliant throughout the game. He's been brilliant. This is a player to actually watch in this year's AFCON tournament. You understand? Azzedine Ounahi. He is a player to watch. He's brilliant. He's phenomenal. He's brilliant. After some great interchanging play, some great play, wonderful, fantastic football being played, by the World Cup semi-finalists, which saw Ounahi hit a shot, stunning shot from outside the box, going in, clipping the inside of the post and actually making its way into the back of the net to seal the deal for the Moroccans. And shortly afterwards, Sevilla forward Yusuf En-Nesyri put the game beyond any reasonable doubt after some great wing play from Achraf Hakimi, who actually brought the cross into the box, a low cross from, Achraf Hakimi. So the on-rushing Yusuf En-Nesyri, who scored, a historic goal for Morocco, because now he has become the first Moroccan player to actually score in 4 AFCON tournaments. So this is the 4th tournament he has been able to find the back of the net, and he has made history, becoming the first Moroccan player to score in 4 different AFCON tournaments. So remember, the goal was disallowed at first, but then it was made to stand after he was clearly onside and he did time his run. Great victory for Morocco, showing their dominance, displaying their quality, and we know that this is a team that is actually the favorites. Ironically, Morocco have only won the African Cup of Nations once, and another thing that you also have to take into consideration is the fact that they haven't been at their best in continental tournaments. They've actually had very poor continental tournaments. Remember, in 2019, they were dumped out in the group stages. Even at that time, Hakim Ziyech, had a below par tournament. And remember, he also did not partake in Cameroon after, some bad blood between him and the former manager of Morocco. So they haven't been at their best, at continental competitions. But this year could be their year. It could be their year. Like I said, you cannot underestimate anybody, but they are indeed the superior favorites of actually clinching the title in Ivory Coast. So on to the next game that took place in Group F. Okay, it was the Democratic Republic of Congo taking on Zambia. So the 2-time champions taking on the 2012 champions. Remember, the Democratic Republic of Congo won the African Cup of Nations titles back in 1968 as well as in 1974. Whilst on the opposite side, as I did mention before, Zambia actually clinched the 2012 African Cup of Nations. They lifted it against this year's host nation, Ivory Coast. So 3 titles between these 2 teams. Not much is really expected from them. I don't think anybody does fancy these teams of actually going all the way, but certainly this was an important game of football to actually watch, because you cannot ignore the history that both of these countries have got in this tournament. You cannot ignore the fact that both of these countries have produced quality players. There are players from both of these teams that actually play in a high level in the top leagues in Europe. So, it was indeed, most certainly, this was a game to watch. Most certainly. So, without further ado, the game was pretty even in the opening 20 minutes of the game, in the opening exchanges. But however, against the run of play, Kings Kangwa made the most of a defensive mix-up, to actually put Chipolo ahead in the 23rd minute of the game. Remember, Kings Kangwa, applies his trade in Serbia, right? So he was actually on point to actually pounce on a defensive error made by the Democratic Republic of Congo. And, Zambia's celebrations were short-lived. I mean, just 4 minutes later, the Leopards were level in Group F, in the Group F match, thanks to a close-range equalizer from Brentford forward, Yohan Wissa, right? And then from that point onwards, the game was pretty even, pretty balanced to say the least, going into the halftime break. But in the second half, the Democratic Republic of the Congo were more dominant. They were the side that were more dominant. They were the side that showed actually more urgency. They were the side that actually showed more intention. They were the side that showed more quality. But unfortunately, they lacked in the final third. Unfortunately, they just could not capitalize on their dominance. And unfortunately, they just were not clinical in front of goal. But remember, the Democratic Republic of Congo were awarded a second half penalty for a handball in the box. Unfortunately, however, as we've seen in the tournament, VAR had to intervene in this, and the decision was overturned after a short video assistant review, right? And I guess that was a correct decision made by the video assistant referee. Again, early in the Group F game that we saw between Morocco as well as Tanzania, Morocco did prove their credentials as pre-tournament favorites, opening with a comfortable 3-0 victory over Tanzania. And like I said, the Democratic Republic of the Congo in this encounter, they actually made the brightest start. Like I said, although it was kind of even, pretty much balanced, but they actually were the team that actually made the brightest start in an entertaining context, to say the least. In an entertaining contest, dominating the early exchanges, but it was the 2012 champions, who eventually took the lead, as said before, in humid conditions in San Pedro. It was from based on how both these sides performed, it was not really bad. It was an entertaining game of football to watch. It's just that both sides were not clinical whenever they had the chances. Yeah, whenever they had the chances, they were just not clinical. I mean, we saw Silas, the Congolese striker, he blasted over his effort just right in stoppage time. That was a great chance for Congo to actually seal it. But again, it goes back to the fact that they were just not clinical in front of goal. And remember, the opening goal that was scored by Zambia, it came after, the goalkeeper of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Lionel Mpasi, he veered out of his box to clear the ball into touch. However, he collided with Leicester City forward, Preston Daka, in the process, which actually set Chipolo way on song to actually clinch a victory. But shout out to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, as they displayed character, as they displayed maturity to get an equalizer and get back into the game immediately after going behind.